Good afternoon. Let's do some business. We are doing it live right here, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. We get right down to business with the news-driven hour right after Ben Shapiro, and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air right now, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com, and your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, and all your favorite podcast platforms. Record-shattering day for the stock market. And some big news from billionaire Elon Musk. He's moving out of California, moving the headquarters of SpaceX in Hawthorne, and also moving social media company X to Texas from California. Elon Musk posting on X, formerly known as Twitter, today that he plans on moving SpaceX from Hawthorne here in Southern California to the company's rocket launch site called Starbase in Texas, and X will move to Austin, Texas from San Francisco. He called a new law signed by California Governor Newsom that bars school districts from requiring staff to notify parents of their child's gender identification change the final straw. In his words, I did make it clear to Governor Newsom about a year ago that laws of this nature would force families and companies to leave California to protect their children, in his words. Tesla, where Musk is the CEO, moved its corporate headquarters already to Austin from Palo Alto back in 2021. Elon Musk has said that he has moved his residence from California to Texas, where there is no state personal income tax. SpaceX, of course, based here in Southern California, builds and launches its Starship rockets from the southern tip of Texas. At a site called Starbase, the company's smaller Falcon 9 rockets take off from Cape Canaveral as well as Vandenberg Space Force Base near Santa Barbara here in Southern California. And because of that, that's why we're able to see those Falcon 9 rocket launches when they go into polar orbit here in Southern California when they launch from Vandenberg. So big news from Elon Musk today. He's out of here. Meanwhile, stocks finished higher with the Dow at a record high. In fact, seeing its best day of the year. In fact, more than a year. The rally beyond the mega cap tech names today gaining more steam after a stronger than expected June retail sales report added to evidence that the economy is still holding up. The Dow closing up 743 points, settling at 40,954. That is a record high close. And the blue chip index seeing its biggest one-day percentage gain since June of last year, and it's seeing its largest daily point gain since November of 2022. A surge in United Health Group stock accelerated today, with that stock posting the top performance in the Dow Jones Industrial Average of about 6%. The S&P 500 today closed up 36 points, and that was a good enough for a record high close for the S&P 500, the 38th all-time closing high for the S&P 500 this year. And the NASDAQ saw a modest gain, ending slightly higher today of 37 points at 18,509. The Russell 2K Small Cap Index has been getting a lot of attention lately. It's closed at its highest seen since January 2022. That index jumping at 3.5% today and is up at 11.5% over the past 5 trading sessions. The yield on the 10-year note has eased today to 4.17%. That's the lowest we've seen since mid-March. On the economy, if current economic trends of a softening of both inflation and the labor market continue, the Fed can begin to cut rates this year, according to Fed Governor Adriana Kugler. She gave a speech today at the National Association for Business Economics. She said if economic conditions continue to evolve in this favorable manner, in her words, I anticipate it will be appropriate to begin easing monetary policy later this year. If the labor market starts to cool too much, the Fed should cut sooner rather than later, she said. On the other hand, if inflation looks sticky, it might be appropriate for the Fed to hold rates steady for a little longer. We saw the price of gold at a record high today, up nearly $40 to settle at $2,467.80 an ounce after getting as high as $2,470 and change. Prices topping the previous record high finish. We're also taking a look at an economic analysis today from Morgan Stanley. Maybe the economy has not slowed all that much. Wall Street analysts raising GDP forecast after a surprisingly strong retail sales report. Morgan Stanley raising its estimate, for example, of gross domestic product to 2.2% for the second quarter from a previous estimate of 1.8%. And the Atlanta Fed's GDP Now forecast was lifted to 2.5% from 2%. The price of oil, meanwhile, continues to slip, moving lower for the third day in a row today. Brent crude in London hitting the lowest levels we've seen in about a month. And in New York, we see a crude oil down $1.21 to $80.70 a barrel. What else is happening? Bitcoin back in the focus this week, and a big rebound right now, hovering just above 64,000. We're going to talk more about that big Elon Musk announcement coming up here later this hour. He's out of here because he says California has become the first state to prevent school districts from requiring staff to notify parents of their child's gender identification change under a law signed by Governor Newsom this week. I'll talk about that with Lance Christensen, Education Policy and Government Affairs at California Policy Center. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, another record-shattering day for the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and, of course, what's happening on the political scene as well. Day 2 of the GOP conference and convention. Joining us live now, money manager Ken Winans, president of Winans Investments, market historian, author of Investment Atlas 1 and 2, also Forbes magazine contributor. Ken Winans, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Frank, it's always my pleasure. And, of course, it's fun to be here on a record-shattering day, as you put it, and that there's a lot of news out there, good, bad, and ugly, that's worth going over. There's a couple other groups that I think are worth mentioning. It's very clear that with the perception that rates are at least neutral now and possibly coming down, the bond, and I'm mainly talking about corporate bonds and preferred shares, are on a tear right now. They have taken off. People are loading up in bonds. In fact, I saw an article today that people are buying municipal bonds across the board. So you're seeing buyers coming to the market. But with that said, it's a rotational move right now, Frank. You're finding people, like a good case in point today, NASDAQ went up a little bit, but nothing like a lot of other groups, which you and I will talk about in a bit.
All right, so the price of gold, meanwhile, at an all-time high. We keep hearing inflation is supposedly easing, but isn't gold supposed to be an inflation hedge? Ken, what's going on with that record high today?
Well, I mean, who would have ever guessed that gold would be up 20%, and we're not even through this full year yet? I mean, it's the tortoise and the hare. It gets overlooked by the razzle-dazzle of crypto and certainly other things, but it has just been, it and silver have both been on just amazing runs really throughout this year, and I'm going to include last year as well. What's going on with gold is it is geopolitical. You're having, well, and also seasonal. Gold typically does very, very well during this time of year in other parts of the world. The big buyers of gold are typically India and China. They're buying it for two different reasons. India, it's jewelry. Their culture is very, very heavy on jewelry for weddings and festivals. And in the case of China, they've made it very clear that they're going to build up their reserves of gold. There's rumors that they're as part of the exchange on the Ukrainian-Russian war, there's gold from Russia going over to China for payments. There's all this kind of stuff going on. But yes, gold is in a major uptrend. I would not sell it right now. In fact, for people who are concerned about the geopolitical picture, I could make a case that I think you should look at buying some of it. But again, be very careful not to go crazy with it.
All right, from gold chain to blockchain, I know you cover all the bases these days after receiving that certification in crypto recently, so it's great to be able to have thorough conversations about crypto with you. We see Bitcoin has really had a tremendous rally since the weekend. Right now it's down about 800, but now still above 64,000, rebounding pretty impressively from the recent low, but still off its all-time high. What do you make of what's happening with Bitcoin and the latest crypto action we've seen?
Crypto, where Bitcoin and Ethereum are both up over 50% year to date so far. So it wasn't a surprise to see a little bit of profit taking that we had seen happen throughout last month. And then if you're just going to look at since the end of June, you're looking at a situation where it's still pretty flat. But it is the volatility. I mean, I've had many people say, this volatility is just too much. I can't believe how crazy it is. Well, everybody likes upside volatility, but they get very concerned about downside volatility. And I think that, again, it goes back to the regulatory. They're calling it the Trump play right now. I love it where they're calling crypto a Trump play when former President Trump initially was very, very cautious about crypto. But I think you have that move going on. You have still a lot of movement going on with ETFs And I still think stable coins. The big trend is certainly people are looking at broadening out their holdings out of Bitcoin. They don't want to start giving it back. But in a moment, I'll talk about my favorite crypto play in one of my stock picks today. But Frank, the big moves today, and I think this is so important, and you were right on the mark on bringing it up, is that we have to look at the other indices that we've typically turned our back on for a good part of the last 2 years. And you mentioned the Russell 2000. I'm also going to mention the S&P 400 mid-cap. These are not the biggest companies. They're not the smallest. They're that nice sweet spot in our economy. And these companies are coming back to life. When rates are going up, they were being hurt as well as the small caps. But very clearly, both of these indices are moving forward. And I do think that as we go through this earnings season, which right now we still have a long ways to go, and I would be cautious about jumping into anything that's too far in it, way too stretched in its price. But I do think that this rotation into these other areas is going to continue to be very sustainable. And for people looking at rebalancing their portfolios, I would certainly look, especially at the mid caps. That's where you're going to find some of your better bargains.
On the air live with money manager Ken Winans with Winans Investments. And Ken, we saw those healthcare names really rally today. Molina Healthcare, for example, up big. United Health helped propel the Dow higher today. What's happening with these names coming to life all of a sudden?
Well, Frank, you're stealing some of my favorite names that I'm going to be talking about here in a moment. The two big H's that popped up today on my screen were healthcare and home builders. But let's talk about healthcare. The group, again, here's another example. The group had been under pressure pretty much throughout this year. I think this is very much a rotation, a political rotation. We have the geopolitical, which is what's happening overseas, and we have the political now. And I think many people are saying that they think that the Trump play is going to be in healthcare, and certainly United Health posted some amazing numbers today, surprised everybody because the stock had been under tremendous pressure for much of this year. So I think that the healthcare play is going to continue live and well. Clearly there are some names that have extended way too far. I mean, we know that Novo had the overweight pill, the magic pill as they were calling it. That stock had been on a tear for a couple of years. But clearly, you just mentioned a couple other names. These things are coming back to life, and I think healthcare will be less of a stock picking play as it in an industry group play going into the election.
All right, what about the Magnificent One, pulling back a couple of dollars today? NVIDIA down more than $2 at 126.
The Rolling Stone Music Now podcast gets inside the biggest stories with Rolling Stone senior writer Brian Hyatt, Snoop Dogg, and Lotto.
Let me give you one of my secrets. I remain the biggest kid in the room at all times. There's a kid in you can't believe that. Look at where you at. Keep making it about fun.
Yeah, we blessed to be able to do a job that's like fun.
There's two funds that's the most important funds in the world. Funds that you make off of the fun that you have.
Rolling Stone Music Now, wherever you listen.
Change. Meanwhile, Apple continues on a roll here. Looks like a new high at 234 and change. What about those two big names?
Well, I'm looking at a lot of when you think of tech in general, and I try to cover the popular tech, as you say, the magnificence, and I look at the ones that are kind of dull. It is interesting how much Apple, in April, it was at a goose egg. As of right now, it's up 22% on the year. It's had an amazing rally. But Frank, what I would say is this. Again, I caution anybody, this has been the hot sector for the last 2 years. I truly recommend people wait for the earnings before you jump in anything that is up. If you look at some of these names, they're up 120%. They're 30% off their 200-day moving average. I think you just want to be a bit cautious not to jump into something until you really do see what's going on there. I will just say, though, that what you seem to be getting out of the investment community right now, there's a little more scrutiny on the AI investment play. There were some reports coming out today that were saying that, yes, it is a natural development in the high-tech world and in our high-tech society, but some people are really questioning whether we're going to see these big, massive jumps in productivity that have been promised soon as people expected us. By the way, I happen to be in that camp. It takes a long time to get something off the drawing board into our everyday lives. And go back to look at the mishap that Google had with AI late last year. There's going to be fits and starts with this, so it's not a surprise to see some of these groups beginning to pull back.
On the air live with Ken Winans, and the GOP convention focused on the economy last evening, and today it looks like crime is going to be in focus, also a big issue. We got those retail sales numbers out today, which came in better than expected, although appear to be flat. What about the retailers here? Also, and with that crime component being such a big factor in the bottom line of the retailers nowadays.
Frank, it's funny you bring that up because, as you know, last week I was in studio in Los Angeles, and I did go down to Santa Monica to the 3rd Street Promenade and do some shopping. And it was very clear that, there were people out there doing their shopping, yet the stores had very high security because of the situation with shoplifting and people just, actually possibly robbing shoppers. So it's kind of funny you bring up that we do see people feeling good about their pocketbooks. Their stock portfolios are up. Maybe they've had a raise. They're out spending money, but there is a cautionary tale about going to the conventional shopping centers because of some of the issues that you just mentioned. So I would just say this: summertime is typically a good time to be shopping, but I wouldn't take one statistical data point as a new trend. I think it's going to have ebbs and flows. It will continue to play out through the year. And let's face it, there's still a lot of people out there who are really having trouble making ends meet. So you also have to ask yourself, what type of shopping is being done right now, and where's the shopping happening? And I still think you're finding it at the bargain type stores and at the mid-level retailers.
All right, and circling back to the top story, Elon Musk clearing out of California, including SpaceX, as well as X, formerly known as Twitter. He's moving out of the Bay Area and is moving out of Hawthorne. What's your reaction to that big news here today?
It's eerie. It brings back the memories of what happened in the early 90s with the aerospace industry out of California. And I would argue that the Southern California area, especially if you're going down certain freeway areas where there was the massive warehouses of aerospace. Remember, Southern California built the space shuttle. And It had, it's built parts of the Saturn V moon rocket, and that all left. So to have what had been the look of the new space age, the new company leaving California, that really should be a clue to elected officials that they need to go back and rethink of some of their policies. That just could have been, over the next 20, 30 years, that could have been such a boom for Southern California. Unfortunately, it's a tale of what we see, a replay of what happened before. I think you're going to have more migration, Frank. It's going to continue, whether it's the Bay Area, Southern California, whether it is social policy or just the cost of doing business. Companies and people are saying we're looking for another place to go where the quality of life can be as good, if not better, than California, and that certainly we have more money in the pocketbook.
All right, and last but not least, surprise question here. Where are you putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Well, you keep stealing my thunder, my friend, but I'm going to throw out the crypto name that a lot of people are struggling right now. I'm talking about mainstream investors. Where can I do the crypto play where I'm not buying an ETF that seems like the fees are very high, and yet I just am scared to jump into Bitcoin or Ethereum? You need to take a good look at Coinbase, which is basically the exchange. If you think of like a stock exchange, this is the crypto exchange. This is one of the biggest. It actually has insurance on its accounts. Many people don't know that. The symbol on this is COIN, like a coin. It's volatile, but it's had a great year so far. But if you want to play crypto, that would be my choice right now. That way you're playing stable, you're playing Ethereum, you're playing Bitcoin, you're playing all of them with one stock. So I take a look there. I don't think you want to blow off this rally in United Health today. I think that many people find they do not have enough health care in their portfolio. I would take, and I dare say you might want to think about some rotational moves out of some of your tech plays. But the two names that are sticking out in my book are Novo Nordisk, which is NVO, and McKesson, MCK. Both these stocks, they've had great years, but they are they had a slight pullback. They seem to be recoiling now, and I think both are going to have really good earnings this quarter. And then last but not least is just, you want to have your list put together and realize that over the next 2 weeks, the new leaders of the market will begin to materialize. and you want to be prepared to jump on those. And, just so far so good with the summer goes. July is typically a good month.
Kaboom. A lot of thunder there, Ken. You had it. So thank you very much for that very thorough assessment and analysis. As always, we do appreciate it, and I look forward to our next conversation again very, very soon on a big day today in which the Dow Jones Industrial Average had its best day of the year. In fact, in more than a year, closing up 743 points to an all-time high, 40,954. Money manager Ken Winans, president of Winans Investments, market historian, author of Investment Atlas 1 and 2. Soon to be a new book out, right, Ken, as well as a Forbes magazine contributor. Thank you very much, Ken, for taking the call here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank. Take care.
Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KBC. Yep, we have a winner. The Dow up 743 points, biggest one-day point gain of the year, 40,954 at the bell. That's a record high close for the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which has roared back to life recently. The S&P 500 closing up 36 points at 5,667. That's a record high there. The NASDAQ up 37 at 18,509. NVIDIA down $2.08 today at 126.36. Apple up slightly at 42 cents. At 234.82. It is at or near record highs today. We see Molina Healthcare up 23 to 307, and United Health among the winners of more than $33 at 548 and change. Bitcoin's been bouncing around mostly higher. Bitcoin right now pulling back a bit to 64,300. Ethereum down 23 at 3,419, and Doge at 12 cents. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Bombshell report today. Big announcement, actually, from billionaire Elon Musk announcing he is moving the headquarters of SpaceX out of Hawthorne. He's also moving social media company X. They're all moving out of California and going to Texas. Elon Musk posting on X today that he plans on moving SpaceX from Hawthorne to the company's rocket launch site called Starbase in Texas. And X, formerly known as Twitter, will move to Austin from San Francisco. The reason? He called a new law signed this week by California Governor Gavin Newsom that bars school districts from requiring staff to notify parents of their child's gender identification change the final straw. Elon Musk said, in his words, "I did make it clear to Governor Newsom about a year ago that laws of this nature would force families and companies to leave California to protect their children." California now becomes the first state to prevent school districts from requiring staff to notify parents of their child's gender identification change under a law signed by Governor Newsom. The governor signed this law, Assembly Bill 1955, a bill that takes the unprecedented step of instructing school districts basically to lie and to keep secrets from parents about their own children. The way the state puts it in their announcement, according to the announcement we got today from the state superintendent, following outcry from LGBTQ plus students and families whose local districts enacted forced outing policies.
It's kickoff time, and Believe podcasts are here to get you ready for the season.
This team, they looked to figure it out, and they said, okay, we got a shot at this thing.
With Believe, you get immediate reactions, game previews, and expert analysis from all 32 teams, plus all of your favorite college teams.
This is a true junior that we're talking about.
Sideline to sideline, end zone to end zone.
The running was good. His size is unbelievable.
Just search Believe. That's BLEAV podcast, wherever you listen.
Over the past year, State Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Thurmond today celebrated the signage of AB 1955, Support Academic Futures and Educators for Today's Youth Act, the Safety Act, signed into law now by Governor Newsom. Joining us live now is Lance Christensen, who is Vice President of Education Policy and Government Affairs at the California Policy Center. Lance Christensen also previously ran for State Superintendent of Public Instruction here in California. Lance Christensen, thank you for taking the call, and give us your reaction to this big news here.
Hey, thanks for having me on. You know, we've been bird dogging these bills that have been anti-family for years, and this bill, AB 1955, which is authored by an Assemblyman Chris Ward from San Diego, essentially says that parents are not to be trusted, but bureaucrats at schools should keep secrets from them. And this makes the accusation that every parent is a danger to their own children and don't have the best interest as a teacher who only has them for 9 months of the year. And Governor Newsom, ironically enough, has none of his 4 kids in public schools. None of these kids will be impacted by this bill because he sends them to very nice schools in Marin County where they will be at liberty to tell parents when things go wrong.
On the air live with Lance Christensen, Vice President of Education Policy and Government Affairs at California Policy Center. In reaction to this big news, Elon Musk made a very big announcement today. He's leaving California, pulling out all of his businesses out of California.
Yeah, Elon Musk has worked really hard, actually, to build bridges with Gavin Newsom and really develop a top-notch, 21st century economy, especially with the innovations he's doing in transportation and electrical battery and social media, and had made overtures to the governor to work and stay here in the state. But between this bill and the deplorable state safety in his different, sites and headquarters, he can't find any reason to stay in the state of California that is deteriorating as rapidly as California is.
What do you think will be the practical impact of all this? According to the reports that we've seen, the new law shields teachers from retaliation for supporting what they're calling transgender student rights and prohibits K through 12 forced disclosure rules. How is this going to be applied?
So throughout the state, there have been at least a dozen school districts that have implemented parental notification policies that if a student wanted to change their name or their pronouns or their gender, that the teacher or the administrator of the school just simply had to notify the parents. And these have been upheld by several court rulings. There's been teachers that have been fired from school down in San Diego and other places, and they have won 6-figure settlements against their districts. We've also had parents in different districts whose children have been groomed. And the question is, how much longer and how teachers are going to abide by the idea that they have to tell their students once they come out to them that they feel like they're transgender. Again, this has zero to do with lesbian and gay, children. This has everything to do with kids that are confused about their gender. What's going to happen when these kids go home because they feel like their parents won't be there for them and they make a decision that takes their own life? Who's going to be responsible at that point in time? Are teachers willing to get to that place instead of communicating with parents when they see their children really suffering? I hope that parents and teachers can work through this amicably. I hope that districts continue to push forward policies that protect that relationship, but we should strengthen the parent and child relationship and not sever it.
All right, certainly a huge difference in opinion here. According to the statement we received from the current State Superintendent of Public Instruction, he said, "I'm proud to work alongside our lawmakers who have courageously championed the privacy rights of our most vulnerable students and whose partnership has helped ensure that this bill made it to the governor's desk for signing." He calls it a major step forward for the rights of students and families and a reason to celebrate. What's your reaction to that assessment?
Well, 2 problems. One, Tony Thurmond thinks that every parent is a predator and a bad person. That's the first problem. The second problem is he ignores that federal law actually opposes this. And so the second that any school district implements this policy from the federal law, it will be sued. And we've had 100 years of Supreme Court precedent that has said that the parent is the prime protector and caregiver of every child, not any bureaucrat or teacher or anybody else out in the community, as well-intentioned as they are. And we should defer to them. And if we have parents who are bad, then we already have the tools to report them to law enforcement and deal with that appropriately so. But we shouldn't say that every parent out there is potentially a parent. We should treat all these parents with the due deference and respect that they deserve and acknowledge that they don't have, that the child does not have a privacy right against the parents, that the parents should be involved in any conversation, whether it be grades or discipline, safety, and gender transitions.
What recourse do parents have in the face of this?
Well, they can take their kids out of public schools if they feel like their schools aren't listening to them. They can homeschool them or go to a private or even a charter school, though charter schools are public. I am hearing from a lot of other people that are just simply done moving out of the state. So it's sad and unfortunate. My wife and I have 5 kids. All of them have gone and are in the public school system. So we do what we can to maintain a good relationship and conversation there, and it might require school districts and school trustees to civilly be disobedient and push back against an unconstitutional law.
Do you think the Elon Musk announcement in reaction to this will get people's attention?
I think it will get national and international attention. I was just on a show with a television station from Europe yesterday, and they're tracking this very closely. So I think that not just in California and not just across the country, but around the world, people are watching what's happening in America as we continue to berate parents in relation to their children.
Probably get more calls today, since just today is when Elon Musk made the announcement in reaction to this the signing of this bill. He's clearing all of his businesses out of California. Thank you very much for coming to the line on this big story. Lance Christensen, Vice President of Education Policy and Government Affairs at the California Policy Center, live with us here this afternoon on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. Good afternoon. Opponents of California's ambitious targets for electric car adoption to lower greenhouse gas emissions taking their case recently to the U.S. Supreme Court, the latest salvo against the state's campaign to push for EVs. Energy companies, corn growers, and industry associations have long opposed strong environmental rules here in California. For decades, the only state with power to request a waiver from the Environmental Protection Agency to set its own vehicle emissions regulations that are more stringent than the federal standard. Meanwhile, a Supreme Court ruling also potentially impacts electric vehicles here. And joining us live now is Lauren Fix, editor-in-chief of Car Coach and the co-host of the Total Car Score podcast. Lauren, thank you very much for taking the call and for following these reports very, very closely. Tell us about this this bombshell, really from the Supreme Court that will impact EVs here.
Well, the Supreme Court's recent ruling is called a Chevron deference. It's because of Chevron, the oil company. But what had happened is there was a past lawsuit, without getting deep into the weeds, and it changed the rules so that non-elected officials could make rulings to make things better for consumers. But over time, as we know how it always happens, unelected people also made additional rules, regulations, and fees and fines to consumers, and it was never changed. So someone took it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court turned it over. Now, what this is it affects federal regulations from everything from, in this case, where I focus, power plant emissions to electric vehicles to transmission lines, so the cost of electricity coming to you, and electric vehicle mandates. Now, we do understand there's a California Air Research Board. They were the first ones to create the rules and regulations, and the other 49 states follow. However, this is also going to court right now, and we'll be seeing that hopefully in the next session. But turning this over, what this really means to us is it changes the mandate for the Green New Deal and for electric vehicle mandates. So this is a win for consumers. So you can choose whatever it is you want to drive. I'm now calling cars independence machines because you do have your independence to choose what you want, to drive wherever you want for as far as you wish. And they're trying to obviously put controls on us. But now that the courts have more say in interpreting these rules on everything from the EPA's latest effort to power plant emissions, the Federal Energy Regulation Commission can no longer make these statements without them going through Congress. So if they're going to say there's an electric vehicle mandate, then your elected officials from every state have to agree on that. And this is really interesting because this could put a big hot, wet blanket on the Green New Deal.
And people getting in their cars and driving away from California as far as they can, including Elon Musk. I don't know if you heard the news, but he's clearing his companies out of California altogether based on a law that was just signed into law here by Governor Newsom impacting children. Now, what about the kill switch story, the growing threat of government control of your car, your freedom ride, as you describe it here? What's the latest on the kill switch idea?
Well, it's important to note that also Elon Musk is moving not just X. He's already moved Tesla, and he's moving SpaceX's corporate offices to Texas. So it's for tax reasons, obviously. But there's some new technology that was passed in the infrastructure rule. So we've talked about this before, the kill switches. That was Section 24220, and we've been trying to get it stripped out. And hopefully this Chevron deference will allow us to get it passed out of the ruling, and this doesn't happen. But we got to move quickly because 2026 models are coming soon, and we're already driving 2025s to review. So what we also found out that was in the infrastructure bill, along with the kill switches, was AI speed cameras. There'll be 2 cameras that'll be mounted on every single intersection possible, obviously the major ones first, working their way down to the local ones, that will be able to zoom into your car and literally spy on you. They'll be able to see whether you're wearing a seatbelt, which you should be wearing, and I'm a pro seatbelt user, but they'll also see if you have your phone. Maybe it's on your lap. You don't have a spot for it in your cup holder or in your center console. You just put it on your lap. Well, that may give them the impression as if you're on your phone. It'll also say if you're speeding or if you're doing anything that breaks any rules and regulations. So instead of a police officer pulling you over, stating that you've broken the law in one way or the other, they will be not just doing red light cameras, but they'll also be doing intersections, speeding, seat belts, literally everything that they think is incorrect. Now, how it works is there are 2 cameras. One will be able to zoom into the car, and one will be of the exterior of the vehicle. It will then go through a computer which will decide which of those have broken the law. Those would then be sent to the local police departments, where those local police departments will determine whether you've broken the law, and if they think you're under the influence or whatever it may be, you may have a visitor at your door or a ticket in the mail. And this is a major problem because it's $15.6 billion that was in the infrastructure bill, another line item that no one reads. But the only good thing is it's going down to a local level. So if you're in a little town, you can say, you know what, I'm going to go to my local officials that we elected, whether it be a city, a state, or even a little municipality, and say, we don't want these cameras. You can actually get the pressure not to have them installed. Once they're installed, it's like a red light camera. It's very difficult to get them uninstalled. They're very expensive, and we're all paying for our taxes across the entire country. A lot of people are very unhappy about this. They've already put them in place in UK, and I literally just got back from England. There are cameras everywhere, on every intersection, in every little town. And talking to the locals, they said you can get a ticket in the mail, whether you did it or not, whether you were driving or not. You lent the car to someone. It doesn't make a difference. You're getting the ticket.
All right, I'm going to play red light, green light here. We just have a few seconds left here, but what about the car dealership hacking, that cyber attack on CDK Global you told us about last time? Are things back to normal now at the car dealerships?
They are, but unfortunately, pretty much every dealer, every brand had a severe loss for the month of June. Over $1 billion in losses to the industry, which you may think, well, that doesn't affect me. Well, sure it does, because it goes to your local community. These are local people, local companies that maybe you need a support for a baseball team or some event. If they don't have the cash available to you, then they're not going to be able to support local events as well. So when you think about it being just a dealer, remember that anytime it impacts your local businesses, it's going to impact you in one way or another, if they don't have the cash.
Lauren, thanks very much for that. Lauren Fix, editor-in-chief of Car Coach and the co-host of the Total Car Score podcast, live right here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC.
You met Lala Kent on Vanderpump Rules. Now Lala and her friends share everything on Give Them Lala.
Osha now knows the name of the baby.
No Amazon lines for that one.
No. She's going to leak it.
Oh, if she tries to, I'm not letting her because she will leak the name.
And she says it.
She goes, this would look so great for baby S.
Little baby Stephanie? Stephanie? Yeah. People are still guessing. The most recent was Stone.
Oh, that's the name of my son.
Stone.
Watch what Lala is talking about on YouTube or search for Give Them Lala wherever you listen.